Welcome to New York's number two sports show. The Yankees begin the 2026 season by sweeping the San Francisco Giants in San Francisco. They only allow one run the entire series. Didn't allow a run in game one or game two, game three, just one. So Yankee pitching is kind of the name of the game in this opening set of the season. But hard not to feel good about certain things. Look, the offense didn't do a whole lot, but not going to have much problem with that when obviously sweep a series. And, San Francisco is not an easy park to hit. And that goes both ways, right? So as much as you want to give the Yankee pitching credit, it is it's a really good pitcher's park. Um, and the San Francisco, that lineup, it's not great. And we'll see kind of what happens when all is said and done. Like, they've made improvements in acquiring Rafael Devers last year at the trade, or I don't know if it was necessarily the trade deadline, but just last season. They bring in Luis Ariz in the offseason. Like, there's some recognizable names 1 through 9. Um, but when you look at it statistically, it isn't a great lineup, right? So you have to be realistic about certain things. But all to say, like, look, to start out a season, we're in late March right now, right? It's really early in the grand scheme of it all, and the Yankees really do a very nice job. Nearly dominant in a way in the first two games. The third game was more a situation where Yankee pitching got out of jams. I think there was 4 double plays, 3 of them late in the game when they really needed it. Defense was really strong and sound when it was needed. And you know, it's very, very early, but a thing in the Boone era, and I think the stats back this up, certainly in the very recent years, is Yankees have kind of come out of spring training fairly buttoned up, where things go well. And again, this is the earliest of sample sizes. You don't want to overreact to things because it's silly. I mean, you're 3 out of 162. That's nothing. But I just wonder, will it be another thing again where the Yankees kind of get off to a pretty good start the first few months, and then it's kind of a summer malaise where things just are seemingly horrible, only to be picked back up again, towards the end of the season? Who knows, right? Hopefully it's not the case. Hopefully it's just consistency the whole way through. Easier said than done. But um, you know, I thought that going into the season, Yankee, specifically starting pitching, was going to be a big, big strength of this team. And we haven't even seen, Cole, Rodon, Schmidt. Like, you're not going to see those guys to varying degrees until later on in the season. Um, but for now, I like what is in store, and they're going to go with the 4 man rotation, to start. And, there's still a lot to see as well. We'll talk about that kind of more towards the end of the episode. But the bullpen, kind of underratedly, does actually a very nice job in this series. And we're going to obviously discuss that too. Offense, not so much. But again, when you win 3 games, 3 out of 3, I'm just not going to complain much about it. Um, you know, in this season with the show, with the recap episodes, I want to incorporate some new segments. And it's kind of a fluid situation. We might add some things on, maybe subtract, but more likely add on as the year moves along. But at the very least, I want to do a best player of the series, worst player of the series, which in this one is going to be, I'm still going to do it, right? Regardless of if the Yankees sweep or get swept, I'm still going to do it to my best ability. And I'll admit, this one was a little bit tricky for worst. And then also key moments of each game. So the plan that I have is kind of more towards the top of the show. Obviously, there's not much like transactional news to discuss since it was the first series. I kind of touched on all that in the opening day roster episode, which was kind of a season preview. And so nothing changed. It was as expected as far as the opening day roster. And so basically, when it comes to the key moments, I'm going to try, and I hope I don't, sort of forget it in moment. I don't think I will, but there is that chance. The way I have it now is I'm, within speaking about each game. And also, I think I might have said this at the beginning of last year. I want to do more of a skim through and not go so deep into the weeds of each game. So I'm going to try to have a little bit of abbreviated version, but I want to have a key moment from each game that we'll discuss while I'm kind of going through it. But when it comes to best and worst player, I want to have that be a thing more towards the beginning of the show. So with that said, um, best player of the series. This, you could have went in a couple of directions, but and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, right? It's more of a sneak preview, if you will, because this player really was great in Game 2, Cam Schlittler. And it was so much excitement about him going into the season. He ends up going 5 1/3 innings, only allowing 1 hit, no runs, no walks, and 8 strikeouts. Just very easy. He was filthy, but like just with ease. I mean, we saw that last year, um, where he throws just easy gas, 99 miles per hour, sometimes 100, like, and just made easy work of San Francisco. So that was the one for me that when it just came down to just pure excitement, I had to go with Schlittler. Now, there was a couple other candidates, and I want to discuss them as well just quickly. I think the closest one was Giancarlo Stanton. And I really almost went with him, and I think he would have been deserving, honestly, because of the fact, like, let's say I did a pitcher and a hitter one. I think I want to keep it just to one. Um, Stanton would be the hitter for sure. Like, he had multiple hits in each game, hit a home run in Game 2, like, had the best stats by far in this series. And I almost kind of wanted to split the difference between Fried and Schlittler, but then I kind of came to the conclusion that that while Fried's in the top three, right? I think that it was probably Schlittler, Stanton, and Fried. Um, and I believe that with Max Fried, um, Schlittler was just clearly more impressive, even though Fried went an inning longer than Schlittler and as well gave up no runs. And it was the very first game of the season. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where my thought process went there. But ultimately, player of the series does go to Schlittler, but Giancarlo Stanton not far behind, and then Max Fried in the mix as well. As far as worst player of the series, and this one, not that there weren't it's not that there weren't candidates for this, but I just feel like when all was said and done, I end up giving the worst player of the series to Jazz Chisholm Jr. Not that it stood out in a major way. He didn't really completely fuck up horribly. He ends up going 2 for 11. Um, you know, 1 run, no homers, no RBIs, obviously. Does get one stolen base. Bats 182 with a 432 OPS, no walks and 4 strikeouts. So really, I guess in some ways it kind of came down to really him and Ryan McMahon. And I guess the difference maker there was that McMahon did get a pretty big 2-run hit. It wasn't pretty. It was kind of a seeing eye hit in Game 1, but he does get a 2-run steal, and so that was kind of the difference, right? So I don't want to go too deep into that when the Yankees swept. Like, I think if the Yankees had gotten swept, then I think I'd go a lot more into the worst player of the series. I think, depending on whether the Yankees win or lose the series is where I'll kind of lean on more kind of speaking points there. But yeah, worst player of the series to me, and maybe it's not fair, it would go to Jazz. So jumping into it as far as game by game goes. First game, you got, Netflix, which I think that this is one of only a few games on Netflix this year. I'm not 100% sure. I think the next Netflix telecast, I think, might be the Home Run Derby. Like, don't expect Netflix to be a big part of the mix. Again, I say that not knowing the exact amount of games played, but what's really going to be the newest thing, which the Yankees haven't seen yet, is really more of the incorporation of NBC/Peacock. That's going to be the big noticeable difference where they're taking on Sunday Night Baseball from ESPN. So that's kind of the newest thing for 2026 that we, again, haven't seen yet. And I don't know. I don't think we're seeing it for a while either. I don't think the Yankees line up for NBC for quite a bit, actually. But yeah, it was an interesting, sort of pregame festivities, if you will, from the Netflix standpoint, and, different graphics to look at and everything else. But don't want to get too deep into that, but it's kind of came right to my mind as far as this opening night game, the only game of Major League Baseball Wednesday night. So it ends up being, it feels weird. This is a very rare, in terms of regular season, like beyond rare, where I'm doing an episode recap for a series on a Saturday. I'm used to doing that almost exclusively on a Sunday, right? You get the rare Monday every now and I'm talking about the weekend, of course, right? During the week, of course, that's completely different where it can end on a Wednesday, it can end on a Thursday, but almost always the weekend series ends on a Sunday. But what was really, not only was it Netflix that was new, but what was even more important new was the ABS challenge system, which I am so excited for. The only small gripe, and I gotta say, after the first series, not as much as I thought I would. I do wish that it would be three failed challenges, not two. Teams are getting pretty selective. There are times when you are, and sometimes it's smart to be I mean, very smart to be selective, where you're seeing, and look at the Yankee series where there were times where things maybe could have been challenged and they didn't do it given the time of the game, which you kind of have to do. And I guess if you had three failed challenges at your disposal, you might be a little more cavalier. But I know that they want to kind of move the game along. So, so far so good for the most part. But I'm going to dive into that as well, kind of on a game by game basis as much as I can as far as the challenges went. Pretty successful for the Yankees this series. They go 6 for 7. But ironically, the one they got wrong was the very first in the history of Major League Baseball, and we'll talk about that one. I didn't like it, not because it went wrong, just the situation just didn't really make sense for it to me. I was kind of surprised that Boone seemed very okay with it in the postgame presser. Not that he was going to rip it was Caballero. Not that he was going to rip him to shreds on it, but I was kind of surprised that he truly, genuinely seemed fine with it. So the opening lineup is Grisham, Judge, Bellinger, Rice, Stanton, Chisholm Jr., Caballero, McMahon, and Wells. So the only sort of surprises there, and look, maybe I'll run a little bit longer, with it being the first episode recap than other ones, kind of a lot of ground to cover. The top six was not a surprise to me at all, but I kind of thought, and this isn't me disagreeing, I just kind of thought with Boone, he tries to kind of go with a balance when it comes to the righty lefty thing. So, righty Judge second, Stanton, righty Stanton fifth. So I kind of just assumed that Caballero would be ace, and take your choice as far as McMahon or Wells 7-9. I'm not going to get into that. Look, I think Wells is slightly better than McMahon as a hitter, but they do like Wells in the 9 hole. We've seen that. And maybe that's just a way to kind of blend the 9 into the top. And I don't have a problem with that, but Caballero about 7. So, just interesting more than anything else that they didn't go, because you end up in a situation where 8-9-1 is McMahon, Wells, Grisham, lefty, lefty, lefty. And they must have had a reason for this. Maybe, in it, I don't know. Maybe when it comes to pinch hitting scenarios. But again, I don't have a problem with it. I guess I was just, in my prediction of the lineup, I was a little thrown off. But in terms of who's in the lineup, no surprises at all. And on the mound for the San Francisco Giants was Logan Webb. And Logan Webb, he pitched in the World Baseball Classic with mixed results from what I can remember. Like, I think he was fine. He was fine. He wasn't bad. But he didn't pitch that well here. And you don't want to go crazy conclusions-wise, but like Logan, I don't know, the Yankees, I think, have had some success against Logan Webb. Like, I look at him as a guy, even though I know he's seen as one of the best pitchers in baseball, but maybe because he's in the National League, I don't know, Logan Webb doesn't really scare me much. And maybe maybe there'll be future situations where Logan Webb just absolutely shoves against the Yankees, and maybe there has been times in the past. I don't know, just kind of a feeling there on Logan Webb, but he did not pitch very well in the opener. Bottom of the first is really where Max Fried gets to in his only bit of trouble. Leadoff walk to Luis Arraez, and with 1 out and 1 on, Rafael Devers, who had a quiet series for San Francisco, the former Red Sox, who has killed the Yankees, numerous times. Devers dunks a single into center, and it's a play where, Trent Grisham, it's one that was catchable. And I'm going to talk more positively about Trent Grisham. Honestly, for me, because Trent Grisham's one that I go into the season kind of, and it's a little unfair to him, but there's a little bit of feelings of like, look, he could be a guy that not just me, but the fan base is kind of soured on. More so for the decision to give him the qualifying offer and everything that comes with that, the 1-year, $22 million deal. But that was a play where I know it's the very beginning of the season, right? So we're not going to go crazy on it, and it didn't cost them. But that's one where, if you're supposed to be this really good center fielder, that's one that I would like Trent Grisham to make a catch on. That's just how it is. But Fried's able to strike out Willy Adames with runners on the corners and 1 out, and then gets Jung Ho Lee to ground out. So a nice job by Max Fried to escape out of that. And in the second inning, this is where the action happens. It's a 5-run second inning for the Yankees. And they pretty much put the game out of reach right here. Stan gets it started with a 1-out single. Jazz is hit by a pitch. And then Jose Caballero, who in this time with no Anthony Volpe, I really hope can take advantage of the situation. It's not even me necessarily thinking that Caballero is a starting shortstop. I think he's more of a guy that's a very good utility, great pinch runner, a real valuable guy to have on a team. Not necessarily a lion share starting shortstop guy. All that said, I prefer him over Anthony Volpe. For everything I've seen of Anthony Volpe and the things I've seen from Caballero, give me Caballero. But it's a low bar with Volpe. Caballero starts out with an RBI single. Originally, when it happened, I thought it could have been ruled a double, but it ends up being a single. He ends up going to second. It ends up being second and third, where he beats the play at second. So that gets him started. And then Ryan McMahon, who, let's see how he does offensively. I love him defensively. I'm skeptical of him at the plate, but he's able to find a way with two strikes. He's able to get a 2-run single to make it 3-0 Yanks. And then Austin Wells singles. Austin Wells had a very good game 1. It was a little quiet in game 2 and 3. I thought he did a great job defensively all series, but offensively, quiet in 2 and 3, good in game 1. Austin Wells had a couple of hits. Besides Stanton with 2 hits, the other guy with 2 hits was Wells. But my key moment of the game is a 2-run triple by Trent Grisham. And you could have went in a number of different directions as far as the key moment. But for me here, it's the Trent 2-run triple. Because of everything I said before, for me, I'm looking at him and really hoping that he can do well. I have no real expectations for him against lefties. Like, I don't want him to play against lefties, although, let's see how Randall Grichuk does, to be fair, because I'm not so bullish on Grichuk either. But with Trent, if you play him just against righties only, it could be okay. It really could be. But Trent really, he puts the game essentially out of reach the way it ended up turning out. A 2-run triple for Grisham. That ballpark just, really is big for triple possibilities. And Trent, who isn't much of a speedster, he's able to get in there to make it 5-0. From there, Fried is in real good shape, looking good. Again, apologies if I kind of skip through things here, but again, in the way of trying to kind of be a little bit more efficient and not go too deep in the weeds, there may be some details missed along the way, and I apologize for that. But let's go to the top of the 5th. And again, Fried really did kind of get into a good groove here. Top of the 5th with Webb still in the game. Bellinger leadoff single. Ben Rice single makes it 1st and 3rd. Giancarlo Stanton RBI single to make it 6-0. And then Jazz Chisholm Jr. with 1st and 2nd and no out. It's a failed potential double play where they try to, I think, go 3-6-3 or thereabouts, and Willie Adames with a throwing error that allows Ben Rice to score from second. So Jazz beats it out. I can't remember if it was a play that maybe should have just been eaten, probably. And so that it becomes 7-0 off that. So of course, Jazz, it's not an RBI grounded, obviously. The error allowed the run to score, but it makes it 7-0 Yanks. So let's see here for a moment. Okay, let's go back actually. Where the first ABS situation happens was the top of the 4th with Caballero, where both sides were kind of letting things go. I think there was a little bit of a cautious sort of, first game with ABS. Caballero up 5-0, first pitch of the at-bat. Granted, it was close, but it was a correctly called strike. Like, that was concerning to see that. I don't want that. When you're up 5-0 in the 4th inning, first pitch of the at-bat, I don't like it. You can't convince me that was something that was a smart thing to do. Now, the rest of the series went well. And I don't want to get so result focused, but sometimes you're going to get it wrong, and I can understand where you maybe wanted to take a chance. I am. This one, though, doesn't kind of pass the sniff test for me. I think Caballero, if he could do it again, I just think you let that one go in that situation, right? If it's a closer game and you're trailing and it's later on and you really feel like you can get it, okay, go for it. But not there. So that was a little disappointing there. But I mean, that ends up being the first one in the history of Major League Baseball, and it doesn't go Caballero's way. Fried, really good job, in terms of being economical, where he basically goes 6 1/3 innings, only 2 hits allowed, no runs, 1 walk, and 4 strikeouts for Fried. He gets the win, and just the rest of the way, Jake Bird. I'm not officially doing an unsung hero award for this series for each series, but if I did do one, Jake Bird would probably qualify. Does a really nice job. Looks good in game one. Gets a couple of outs, including a strikeout. Then in game three, gets out of a jam. Looks good. Jake Bird's going to be very key because I have questions about this bullpen. But if Jake Bird can do the job, that's going to make things so much better and a lot easier to, as far as looking at this pen and the depth of it. You can get him in there in a somewhat high leverage role, and he can be the guy that he was in the first half of the year last year for the Colorado Rockies. That would be pretty big. So Bird finishes out the seventh. Brent Hedrick, who we saw a couple of times, with Hedrick, it wasn't pretty necessarily, but I think that there's a role for him. I think Brent Hedrick is kind of a way different lefty than Tim Hill, but I think Hedrick is good enough that I want to see even if it leads to some bad things, eye test wise and even statistically, I kind of like what I see from Brent Hedrick. So again, he had some struggles, but nothing horrible. Pitches a scoreless eighth, and then Camilo Doval. I think this was kind of a nod to Doval being a former San Francisco Giant and it being opening day, because you wouldn't see him in a 7-0 game of the ninth. I think they did it with a day off the next day. It ended up leading to Doval being unavailable the last game, but it didn't hurt them. Doval has a scoreless ninth inning. Yankees win 7-0. Let's go to game two. Game two, Cam Schlittler. Just like I said before, fantastic. And I think someone that most Yankee fans are really looking forward to seeing. This guy could be special. And I don't say that, lightly. Like, he really could be the goods. Goes 5 1/3 innings, allows only 1 hit, no runs, no walks, and 8 strikeouts, 68 pitches. So again, efficient for a guy who was kind of on a pitch count. He was only supposed to go maybe 70 to 75 pitches. So a real nice job done. Cam Schlittler. And for San Francisco, for them, it was Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray did a nice job. He makes one big mistake to Aaron Judge, and Judge has kind of had his number in these matchups. You remember Robbie Ray more so from the Toronto Blue Jays, but he's bounced around a little bit. Was on Seattle for a little bit there. And it's been a little all or nothing as far as Judge versus Ray. What I should have mentioned, game one, Aaron Judge, 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. Yeah. And it is what it is. I'm not going to make a big deal about that. He's gotten off to some bad starts before. I mean, just a couple of seasons ago where he had an MVP 2024 season, he was pretty shit. Basically all of April. He picked it up, in a major way in May and beyond. But it's certainly something worth saying, right? 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. That's bad, obviously, but one that and I've been critical of Judge. It's not like I'm someone that has not been critical of Judge at times, but he ends up making up for it. And if not for the home runs, Aaron Judge probably actually would have been the worst player of the series, but he ends up with a couple of very big home runs in this series. So Yankees go with the all righty lineup, and what I mean by that is no Rice, no McMahon, no Grisham, and you see Goldschmidt at first leading off, Rosario batting 5th at 3rd, and then Randall Grichuk in left batting 8th, and Cody Bellinger gets moved over to center field. This was not a surprise to me at all, considering the fact that the Yankees aren't even lined up to face another lefty for I don't know when, maybe the Marlins series, maybe not even then. I think it's going to be a while since the Yankees see a left-handed starter, and this early in the season, I had no problem. I understand some fans upset, and I get it in terms of Goldschmidt playing over Rice. I do understand it, but look, in game 3, at least, Boone didn't take Rice out for defensive purposes. He left him in there. He did face a lefty and struck out. I think there's an awareness. I think they're going to try to give Rice as much as they can, but here it made sense and it kind of did help. Paul Goldschmidt ends up getting a pretty big hit, which we're going to cut to pretty quickly here. As again, Schlittler, the one thing that had happened was in the second, a 2-out double by Helio Ramos, and really it wasn't even a bad pitch. Ramos goes out and gets it, puts it the other way, but no harm, no foul. The half inning before, Randall Grichuk gets an opportunity with 2 on, 2 out, and it was a soft line out to first with Grichuk. Again, I like the idea of what he can be. I think you want to have that guy that can supplant Grisham against lefties, and I hope Grichuk's the answer. I don't know though. He wasn't that good last year. He's getting a little bit older. I'm fine with being patient with him, and I'm fine with giving him opportunities, but it'll be interesting to see when all is said and done if he does survive. I don't know that he will. So it ends up being, tied up 0-0. Robbie Ray was really good, right? He was matching zeros, but luckily, when Cam Schlittler's day was pretty close to the end, the Yankees are able to get the win for him, and it's Paul Goldschmidt that gets it started with a double. It took a nice bounce to kind of make it from a single to a double in right field, and then Aaron Judge, and this is where ABS comes in play in a great way, is Aaron Judge. And this is, by the way, this is the key moment of the game. Key moment of the game is this Aaron Judge at bat, the 2-run homer at bat for Judge. This is a pretty easy one as far as key moment of the game. 1-0, ball overturned. It was close, but it was just low. And who knows if that becomes 1-1, maybe the at bat's different. Maybe it's not, right? Because this at bat goes from 3-0 to full count. So I don't know for 100% fact that it did change it, but it helped when it goes from 2-0 instead of 1-1. That's big. And Judge is able to take the high fastball and deposit it out 405 feet for that 2-run homer to make it 2-0. Great job. Judge comes through, and at that point, he had really been struggling even earlier in that game, right? Like he was kind of as bad as he's looked in a given, sort of time. And what does he do? He hits the big 2-run homer to make it, 2-0 Yanks. Jose Butto comes in a couple batters later to face Giancarlo Stanton, and Stanton, for good measure, because he had a great series, he homers. And Stanton looked great in spring. So that makes it 3-0 Yanks right there. You do have a situation where there's a couple of pinch hitting things where McMahon pinch hits for Rosario. Trent Grisham later pinch hits for Randall Grichuk. Goldschmidt stayed in the whole time. But, for defensive purposes, it makes total sense to have McMahon come in and for Grisham to come in. In terms of Schlittler leaving the game, it was Fernando Cruz who finishes out the 6th, gets a couple of outs. Then in the bottom of the 7th, and look, there was some missed opportunities as far as the Yankees potentially looking to add on some more runs where you did have Austin Wells ground out, and they get the out at home when it was runner on third, less than 2 out. But when you win the game, you're not going to really dissect it as much. Leading off the bottom of the 7th, Fernando Cruz walks Matt Chapman, and that's the concern that I have with Cruz. I like him as being essentially part of the high leverage crew, but I do have some concerns when it comes to him as far as limiting the walks. And there's a leadoff walk by Tim Hill. Hey, another unsung hero of this series, Tim Hill. Strikes out Devers, strikes out Adames, and then gets Jung Ho Lee to ground out. Like, Tim Hill is a guy that I do like as a lefty specialist late in games. I just do. Do I like him against, powerful righties? No, not really. I would like to avoid those situations, but so far in the few situations he's had them, he's gotten it done. He looked very solid in games 2 and 3. We go to the 8th where, in a lefty-lefty situation, bases loaded, 1 out, Jazz grounds out, and they get the force out at home, and then Caballero grounds out. So some chances for the Yankees to kind of break it open and don't. Camilo Doval looked nasty in the 8th inning, striking out Ramos, Schmidt, and Bailey consecutively, like just wipe out stuff. If he can be that type of guy as a setup man, that again really helps this bullpen in a big, big way. And then bottom of the 9th, Bednar, almost 1-2-3 with Bednar, and we'll talk about it more in game 3. 2-out walk by Matt Chapman after he had him 0-2, but he does get Rafi Devers to ground out. So not a very solid inning for Bednar. Almost had it very easy, got a little bit interesting, but not much. And the Yankees win the series. They win 3-0, another shutout. So 2 games in a row to start the season of no runs for San Francisco. And now we go to game 3. Game 3, Will Warren, and then it goes back to the lineup from game 1 against the righty. Same exact lineup, and there was no substitutions or anything. Will Warren basically wasn't very pitch efficient. Like, was okay. 4 1/3 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. And Warren had a very good spring training. So, not horrible, but not great from Warren. San Francisco definitely worked him. There was a few instances where if Wells wanted to use ABS, it might have helped in terms of Warren limiting the, potential pitches. And I'm not going to get on Wells though, because, I'm not going to go into specifics. I mean, if I recall, I think it was a Rafael Devers at bat in the 1st inning where it was an 0-2 pitch. It was really, really close, and it might have been overturned if Wells wanted to have it. And it ended up leading to Warren probably throwing another 11, 12 pitches. And there may have been another smaller example of that, right? So that's where you got to pick and choose. And unfortunately, it did kind of hurt Warren, where he might have had a better fate and gotten a little bit deeper into the game if things were correctly called or challenged. All to say, let's see what Warren does. His next start will be the home opener against the Marlins. So he'll probably be pretty jacked up for that one in the first home game with a Yankee team that right now, we'll see how they do against the Mariners, is, coming in with some good mojo. But, hoping that he can get a little bit deeper into the game at Yankee Stadium. And he was more successful at home last year than the road anyway. But this was definitely the most competitive game for sure. San Francisco out hit the Yankees. It was really here more missed opportunities for the Giants in this one. And like I said, he could have gotten out of that first inning a little bit earlier if maybe they challenged it, but he ends up not giving up anything. Um, and let's go to the third. And in the third is where Trent Grisham gets the job done in terms of using ABS. Just a horrible call. It was a pitch that was clearly high, I think on a 2-2 on a 2-2, which wasn't really close. And it's a walk for Trent Grisham. And from there, it's a situation where Cody Bellinger ends up getting, after a Grisham walk, with one out, he singles to make it corners with two out, and then Ben Rice, two-run double. And in most stadiums, that might have been done. Ben Rice, who really wasn't totally heard from in the first two games offensively, I thought he did a very nice job on the defensive side for the times that he was tested. But a two-run double for Ben Rice to make it 2-0. He is then thrown out at the plate the next play where Giancarlo Stanton singles. I have no problem with the send. I really don't. With two out, I'm fine with the Rojas send. Good throw by Ramos, and they get Rice out at the plate. The third inning is the one run that San Francisco scores all series. Jung-Ho Lee double, Matt Chapman RBI single makes it 2-1, but Warren, gets out of the rest of the inning. Then you get a nice double play to end the fourth, where it goes from Rice to Caballero to Warren. Ryan Borucki comes in the fifth inning, and this is two out, no one on. So both games, an Aaron Judge home run allowed with the base open at first. Now, I'm not saying you're going to intentionally walk Judge here, and Cody Bellinger is good against lefties. Like last year, he proved that, but Borucki serves one up to Judge to left field off of an ambulance out there. And so Judge's second home run of the series, a big home run to retake that, get that two-run lead back and give the Yankee pitcher just a little bit more breathing room. So Judge, who struck out a lot, really didn't look all that great at the plate, still finds a way to hit two home runs this series to give the Yankees a 3-1 lead. Warren is taken out with one out in the fifth after he walks Jung-Ho Lee. Brett Hedrick finishes out the inning with a couple of a strikeout of Chapman and a fly out of Arise. Bottom of the sixth, though, he does get a leadoff double to Rafi Devers. So lefty, he's not that lefty specialist. He can get righties out, but he's not like a Tim Hill type. Jake Bird gives up a single to Ramos when he comes in. It was kind of more of a seeing eye hit than anything, but he gets out of it with nothing. I mean, he strikes at Willy Adames with a kind of a wipeout type sweeper, and then Harrison Bader double play. Nice play from Jazz to Caballero to Rice. That combination did a very nice job. And I don't mean to slight Volpe, but Jazz and Caballero, it was good in terms of those double play turns. Bottom of the seventh, Jake Bird's still in there, gets a couple of outs to start the inning. So Jake Bird, he could be important. Who knows? He could even move up the pecking order. And again, this isn't fair to say this, but maybe he does kind of move ahead or in the same level as a Fernando Cruz. It's possible. We're not there yet, but it can happen. Tim Hill does finish out the inning in the seventh in a lefty-lefty situation against Jung-Ho Lee. Yankees had an opportunity in the eighth. Not going to get into it, but the runners are stranded, keeping it a two-run game. Bottom of the eighth, Hill gets Chapman a ground out, kind of a lucky infield single for a rise, and then Rafi Devers double play. So they didn't even need to go to Fernando Cruz, who was warming up. Hill is able to get Devers. And if memory serves me correct, in those Yankee Red Sox situations, I think Hill actually did fairly okay against Rafi Devers. So it stays 3-1, go to the bottom of the ninth, and David Bednar. And this is where my key moment of the game happens. Leadoff walk to Ramos, and give Ramos credit because he uses ABS to his advantage on a 2-2 count to extend, deservedly the right call return for Ramos, single for Adames, but then Bednar, who's kind of done a Houdini act in the World Baseball Classic and as a Yankee as well, gets Harrison Bader to strike out, and then Patrick Bailey, the one player that had a walk-off against David Bednar in his career, Pirates versus San Francisco, in San Francisco, I think a couple of years ago, possibly. Patrick Bailey had a walk-off homer against Bednar, but Bednar gets revenge here. Double play. Jazz to Caballero to Rice, and that is the key moment of the game, specifically right there, more so the inning. But if we want to pinpoint it, Patrick Bailey double play to end the game and to secure the sweep for the Yankees. So David Bednar gets a second save, gives Jake Bird the win. The official scorer gives Bird the win, deservedly so. And just unbelievable. Yankees only allow 1 run all series. Now let's look at the next series. Yankees go to Seattle. And this is going to be a tougher series. I think it'll be similar in the sense that it's going to be more pitching. The series over there have been that way. And just look at the starters for Seattle. It's going to be Luis Castillo in game 1 against Ryan Weathers. So more on the Weathers front, that I'm a little more skeptical of, right? Like I have more of a trust level in the 3 starters we saw in this series. Ryan Weathers, mixed results, very mixed results in spring. And you could have argued that Heel may have been a little more deserving than Weathers for that 4th spot. Let's see how he does. I hope he does well. He has good stuff, but naturally that's one that I'm a little concerned on. Then game 2, Max Fried against Logan Gilbert. Logan Gilbert started the first game for Seattle against Cleveland. Mariners are, as I'm recording this, currently in a 4-game set with the Guardians, actually. So from a Yankee perspective, I'm kind of hoping maybe the bullpen's a little more taxed, or the Yankees kind of had a day off on Sunday going into the series. And then game 3, which will be an afternoon game, is Cam Schlittler against George Kirby. That's a fantastic matchup as well. So just really good starting pitching here. And so I think it'll be a lot more competitive than the San Francisco one was, but somewhat similar in the sense that I do think you're going to see a lot of low-scoring tight games, and I wouldn't be surprised if you might see an extra inning game. I feel like we've seen when the Yankees go to Seattle, I think we're good for maybe 1 extra inning game. I'm not saying I'm looking forward to it. It's not, being on the road in those extra inning scenarios is never good, especially with the Yankees, but that's still a little prediction I have kind of going into the series. But it starts out great. It's a West Coast swing to start. Yankees start in San Francisco and sweep the Giants. The pitching was unbelievable, allowing just 1 run to start out 3-0. And now the Yankees, before they head home for their home opener against the Marlins, they will finish out the road trip against the Seattle Mariners.